NASA has once again turned the Space Launch System into a disaster. After a successful wet dress rehearsal, a much more serious issue has now surfaced with SLS, serious enough that the rocket has to be rolled back to the vehicle assembly building for immediate repairs. That move officially pushes Artemis II to April. Just as frustration started settling in across the space community, Elon Musk stepped in and shifted the mood. He revealed the launch timeline for Starship Flight 12, and what felt like another setback for America's return to the moon quickly turned into renewed anticipation. So, what exactly went wrong with SLS this time, and when will Starship fly again? Let's break it all down in today's episode of Alpha Tech. On February 19, 2026, NASA carried out its second wet dress rehearsal for Artemis II, and this time it was a genuine leap forward. After WDR-1 was plagued by the now infamous hydrogen leak at the ground-to-flight quick disconnect seals, the team went back to work. They replaced both the 8-inch and 4-inch seals, swapped out filters in the ground system, and even conducted an additional hydrogen integrity test to eliminate any lingering doubt. They weren't taking chances. And the result, it worked. The countdown began on the evening of February 18th. The rocket was powered up step by step, and more than 750,000 gallons of cryogenic propellant, liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen, were loaded into the core stage and the ICPS upper stage right on schedule. But here's the part that really matters. Hydrogen leak rates dropped dramatically. Just 0.4% during fast fill, peaking at 1.6% during terminal count. That's significantly lower than Artemis I and well within safety limits. For a vehicle that has struggled with hydrogen in the past, that's a major technical milestone. The team also executed 2 full terminal countdown demonstrations. The first held at T33 seconds before recycling. The second cut off at T29 seconds. Exactly the kind of rehearsal you want before committing to launch day. Even the Orion closeout crew performed flawlessly. The hatch was secured, the white room cleared on time, everything clean and procedural. During the post-test conference, Lori Glaze, NASA's acting Deputy Associate Administrator for the Exploration Systems Development Mission. Directorate couldn't hide her excitement.
One thing I do want to say here today is that following that successful wet dress yesterday, we're now targeting March 6th as our earliest launch attempt.
That single sentence sent the entire space community into a frenzy. Because from that moment to launch day, there were barely more than 10 days left on the clock. For many, especially those who grew up watching the Apollo missions unfold in real time, this wasn't just another launch date. It was something deeply personal. The idea that humanity was finally heading back to the moon stirred up memories of black and white television, broadcast Saturn V thunder, and a moment when space exploration felt limitless. For that generation, Artemis II isn't just a mission. It's a revival of something they once believed defined an era. But the excitement didn't last long. Just hours after the press conference, NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman posted an unexpected update on X. He wrote, "After overnight data showed an interruption in helium flow in the SLS interim cryogenic propulsion stage, teams are troubleshooting and preparing for a likely rollback of Artemis II to the VAB at NASA Kennedy. This will almost assuredly impact the March launch window. Oh no, this is bad. And this time, it's more serious than the hydrogen leaks. With hydrogen leaks, NASA still had options. They could swap out seals, replace filters, troubleshoot directly on the pad during the wet dress rehearsal. It was frustrating, yes, but it was manageable without tearing everything apart. This is different. The issue now involves an interruption in helium flow inside the SLS interim cryogenic propulsion stage, or ICPS. And that changes everything. Because this isn't something you can simply patch up at the pad. It forces a full rollback to the vehicle assembly building for deeper inspection and repair. The ICPS is the upper stage of SLS for Artemis II. It uses the RL-10B2 engine powered by liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. Its job is critical. After core stage separation, ICPS performs the translunar injection burn the maneuver that sends Orion out of Earth orbit and onto a trajectory toward the moon. It also maintains stable pressure inside the cryogenic propellant tanks throughout flight. And that's where helium comes in. Helium is not just a supporting system. It is essential. It pressurizes the propellant tanks, pushing fuel into the engine without mechanical pumps. It also purges lines, valves, and engine components, preventing contamination, freezing, or unwanted chemical reactions. If helium cannot flow properly, propellant cannot reach the engine in a controlled way. And without that, the mission doesn't just get delayed, it fails. Here's what makes this especially troubling. During both wet dress rehearsal 1 and 2, the helium system appeared to function normally. Through fueling countdown operations and cryogenic procedures, everything looked nominal. The anomaly only revealed itself after WDR-2 concluded on the evening of February 19th during a routine repressurization procedure designed to keep the vehicle in a safe configuration. At that point, helium suddenly stopped flowing through the vehicle, even though all previous phases had been clean. Right now, the rocket remains safe because ground-based purge systems are temporarily maintaining environmental control. But that is not a long-term solution. You cannot proceed toward launch with an unresolved helium flow anomaly inside the upper stage. NASA is now investigating several potential root causes. One possibility is an issue at the quick disconnect umbilical interface between ground systems and the rocket, similar in architecture to the previous hydrogen leak area. Another is a stuck or failed check valve onboard ICPS, which would be eerily reminiscent of the helium check valve issue that affected Artemis I back in 2022. A third possibility is a clogged filter somewhere between the ground system and the vehicle. Whatever the exact cause turns out to be, one fact is clear. Accessing and repairing helium hardware deep within ICPS requires the infrastructure of the vehicle assembly building. That means removing platforms, opening internal access points, and working in a controlled, fully supported environment. The earliest target to roll both SLS and Orion back from the pad to the VAB, according to NASA's latest update, is the 25th. The move has been delayed by 1 day due to weather conditions. Once inside, the VAB teams will begin tear-down operations, inspect the hardware, replace components if necessary, and then retest the entire helium system before rolling the vehicle back out to the pad again. But who's to say that rolling the vehicle back and forth won't accidentally bring back that infamous hydrogen leak again? If that happens, April could be gone too. And then, we're not talking about a spring launch anymore. We're talking about a launch at the end of the year. Which year, I'm not entirely sure. But hey, don't be too discouraged. After all the workforce supporting Artemis II will continue getting paid through every delay, right? And even if NASA had launched on time, would anything fundamentally change? SLS and Orion aren't revenue-generating vehicles. They're not launching commercial satellites. They're not ferrying astronauts to the ISS on a steady cadence. They don't create a recurring stream of income. Their purpose is strategic. They were built and sustained to secure America's position in the lunar race, particularly against China, a race the United States already won once in the last century. So maybe watching another vehicle fly is in its own way more exciting. Take Starship. It's not just designed for the moon. It's aimed at Mars. It represents something broader, something commercially ambitious and interplanetary. Almost immediately after Isaac Mann confirmed the Artemis II delay, Elon Musk posted a short but electrifying message: Starship flies again next month. Just 5 words. Yet it drew more than 400,000 likes. That alone tells you how massive and engaged the Starship community has become. Some critics even suggested Musk was trying to redirect the narrative, easing pressure on Isaac Mann by shifting public attention. But speculation aside, if Musk is correct, then the next Starship flight could happen in just 2 to 3 weeks. But doesn't that also feel like a subtle jab at NASA? On one side, you have a privately developed vehicle with a clear long-term vision, an aggressive roadmap, and a business model that aims to generate serious revenue. And it's setting launch targets with confidence. On the other side, you have a government-funded system with no commercial revenue stream, no routine crew rotation role. It exists primarily as a strategic, politically driven program, and despite years of development and tens of billions of dollars invested, it continues to slip. And yet, despite all of that, SpaceX still gets criticized for being behind schedule on Starship HLS. What many people overlook is the sheer scale of what SpaceX is attempting on the next Starship flight. Take Super Heavy Booster 19. This isn't just another booster. It's the first Block 3 Super Heavy, designed for a full return-to-launch site profile. That means after stage separation, instead of heading for a downrange splashdown, the booster performs a boost-back burn at roughly 70 kilometers altitude flips. Using its cold gas thrusters, reorients and flies all the way back to Starbase to be caught mid-air by the Mechazilla arms on the launch tower. That capability isn't theoretical anymore. In February 2026, the FAA approved the final tiered environmental assessment, clearing new RTLS mission profiles. The approval included updated airspace closures and provisions for Starship Boca Chica landings, effectively paving the way for booster returns and tower catches at the pad without significant environmental impact. This is a bold move. Block 3 hardware introduces the new Raptor 3 engines, and for the first time, all 33 engines are expected to operate together in a fully integrated ascent profile. Attempting an RTLS catch at the launch site with an upgraded propulsion system raises the stakes significantly. It's ambitious, it's risky, and it's exactly the kind of high-data flight SpaceX tends to pursue. But there's logic behind it. Accelerating booster reusability is critical if SpaceX wants to support the tanker launch cadence required for Artemis II. Rapid turnaround, reliable RTLS, and consistent tower catches dramatically reduce operational costs and increase launch tempo. So, are you excited to see it happen? If you're ready to see Starship push the limits again, drop a comment, go Starship. There's another reason Flight 12 is so exciting to watch. It's not just about the big milestones, it's about the small details. Over the past few days, SpaceX has been repeatedly testing the water deluge system at the pad, and the sheer volume of water blasting upward is incredible. To be honest, even 33 Raptor 3 engines wouldn't be enough to overpower the force of that spray during ignition. The water shoots so high, it completely obscures the booster mock-up at times, almost like the launch pad itself is pushing back against the rocket. It's a vivid reminder of how much engineering goes into protecting the infrastructure, not just the vehicle. Acoustic suppression, thermal protection, structural damping, all of it has to work perfectly when that full thrust column hits the pad.